Hey guys, this is Alicia Podfic, and today we're going to be reading Don't Worry the Justice League Almost Didn't Figure It Out by Bats and the Birds. This is Chapter 3. People were a bit more wary of Nightwing after the incident in the training room. It wasn't that they didn't like him, but someone who could hold his own against, and then outsmart. The Bat was someone who was not to be fucked with. It didn't seem to bother Nightwing though. In fact, Barry would wager that he found the whole situation amusing. The young hero spent most of his time with Wally anyway, who didn't seem at all fazed by what went down. Which was another thing. Barry tried desperately to get any information out of his nephew about what Nightwing's whole deal was, or even just how he met him. But Wally, infamously blabbermouthed as he was, kept quiet for once in his life. All of his questions were just met with hysterical laughter, an amused grin, and a shrug. The only information he actually got out of him was, "I've known him since we were kids, Uncle Barry. You should know that." Followed by Barry attempting to string together a web of all of Wally's childhood friends and coming up empty. And, of course I know who he is under the mask. I'm not telling you, though. Which is why, on Nightwing's first mission with the League, Barry kept sneaking glances at him out of the corner of his eye. He didn't seem nervous, which was strange. Barry was nervous. And he'd been doing this for years. They were on a jet, heading to Eastern Europe to track down the remnants of a robot defense program that had gone astray and began attacking its creator. And Nightwing hadn't so much as twitched this whole time. In fact, he was actively tinkering with a piece of tech in his lap. His face creased with concentration as he examined and tweaked the different parts. Barry didn't pay much mind to the gadget itself, until Nightwing turned it over and saw a very distinctive bat-shaped emblem on the side. He stared at it for a few long seconds, eyes wide, and then blurted, "Is that Batman's grapple gun?" Far, far too loudly, judging by the fact that Dinah turned around from the front of the jet looking curious. Meanwhile, Nightwing didn't even look up. "Huh? Oh, yeah. It's one of his old ones. It works pretty well, but sometimes it catches and won't fire. I've been trying to fix it." Barry made eye contact with Dinah, her eyes as wide as his, then looked back at Nightwing, who didn't seem to see it prudent to explain further. How do you, acquire one of Batman's gadgets?" Dinah asked slowly, brushing her long blonde hair away from her face, where she was in the process of putting it back for the mission. Nightwing shrugged, still focused very intently on the device he was messing with. "I stole it from him a while back. I figured I might be able to do something with it, but this damn mechanism is still giving me issues. I might ask Cyborg for help with it later." Barry and Dinah continued looking between each other and Nightwing, who still seemed oblivious to their astonishment. First, this kid beat Batman in a fight. Then he stole something from him, and he said it so nonchalantly, as though he did it all the time. Barry considered for a moment that he should probably tell Batman that the newest team member was stealing tech from him. But then he remembered that Wally liked Nightwing, and would rather not see him get pounded into a still-living but bloody pulp. Suddenly, Nightwing messed with the mechanism inside of the grapple gun, and the line shot out sideways, hitting the side of the jet with a clang, and leaving a dent there. Nightwing finally looked up, staring at the spot where the grapple hit with his mouth slightly open. "I'll put this away for now." Stealth wasn't exactly Barry's strong suit. He could usually get in and out of a situation so fast that getting spotted wasn't exactly a worry. But now he, Black Canary, and Nightwing were hidden in the shadows outside of what looked like a heavily armored government facility with robot guards. That was surely chock full of more robots than Barry ever wanted to see. They didn't have the key code to get inside, so the plan was to wait for the door to open, and then have Barry run the two non-speedsters inside. Then wreak havoc to give Nightwing enough time to shut down the hub powering the robots. Nightwing, despite his tendency to be unable to stand still while at the watchtower, was practically a statue as he carefully examined the robot guards in the moonlight. "They've got weak points on their backs," he muttered quiet enough that Barry and Dinah could hardly hear him. "Exposed wiring. Rip that out or cut it. They should go down." Black Canary nodded and thumbed at the choker around her neck, while Nightwing reached for weapons in the hidden pockets of his suit. Barry faintly heard Nightwing mumble, "Huh, those aren't mine." But then the armored door of the facility began to open, and Barry didn't have any time to question what that meant before he grabbed his teammates around the waist and ran them inside. Barry would much rather think he just wasn't a good choice for this mission, rather than thinking he was a total fuck-up in this particular instance, or that part of his brain was still devoted to puzzling out the mystery that was Nightwing. Yeah, that was it. Which meant he couldn't be entirely blamed for the fact that he accidentally ran into the path of Canary's cry, got thrown into a wall, swarmed by robots, and then blacked out. It wasn't his finest moment. As his vision faded, he felt his body being dragged away, and faintly saw Canary and Nightwing fighting back to back, taking down one robot after another, and had just enough time to think, "Hey, at least those two are kicking ass," before his mind went blank. When he woke up again, fighting his way out of inky black unconsciousness with his ears ringing, the first thing he noticed was a layer of broken robot parts covering the ground. Then he realized that he was suspended by his wrist by a rope from the ceiling, holding him up so his toes could barely graze the ground. He didn't fully have time to gain his bearings before a flying weapon of some sort cut through the rope, dropping him to the ground, then embedded in the wall next to his head. Head-spinning Barry blearily gazed over at the weapon to find a wicked sharp-looking metal bat. Oh great, I fucked up so badly that they had to send Batman after me. I'm never going to hear the end of this, he thought, his head thumping back against the wall behind him. The next thing he knew, Black Canary was at his side and doing the rest of the ropes, and Nightwing casually plucking the batarang out of the wall. Barry dully thought to himself that Batman was probably going to want that back, but then he realized that the Dark Knight himself was nowhere to be seen. Where's Batman? Barry managed, his words coming out garbled. Dinah looked alarmed and immediately went from undoing knots to checking him over for injuries. You must have hit your head pretty hard, Flash. Batman wasn't on this mission. She looked around as though to make sure no one was watching, then went to pull back his cowl to examine his head. Barry batted her hands away. No, I know, but... The buzzing in his ears was steadily fading as his healing ability caught up with him, and he looked over at Nightwing to double-check that he was, in fact, holding a batarang. Unable to get the right words out, Barry just listlessly gestured to the weapon in Nightwing's hands. Oh no, this is mine. Nightwing tossed the weapon from one hand to the other, actually looking a little confused. Well, not mine. I'm the one that threw it, but to be honest, I've got no clue how I got these. As if by magic, because Barry still couldn't quite parse how the pockets in Nightwing's suit worked. He produced 5 more batarangs and then held them out for Barry and Dinah to see. I've got similar things, except they're obviously not shaped like bats. As to where these came from, he shrugged, pocketing the batarangs again. Well, Dinah said carefully. You did say that you stole that grapple gun. Did you, take those too? Nightwing actually looked like he was considering the question as if he could have stolen the batarangs and then forgotten about it. Maybe? I mean, I've picked dozens of them off of rooftops, but I don't usually carry them around with me. The more concerning question is probably where the hell my wingdings went. But, oh well, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. And as if that was the end of the completely normal conversation, Nightwing shrugged, then bent down to help untie Barry. Barry desperately hoped that Wally knew he'd made friends with someone who had a total lack of self-preservation. Who even thought about stealing Batman's gear, much less was successful? Barry briefly wondered if Batman knew and let him get away with it to help the young hero out, but he squashed that thought as soon as it came up. Batman didn't seem like the type. Bruce looked up from the case of files he was studying when a pile of batarangs was suddenly dumped on his desk in front of him. He looked up to find Dick, unmasked but still in a suit with a frown on his face. Where are my wingdings? He demanded. Bruce blinked, picking up a batarang and turning it over in his hands. I think Tim has them. All of them? Yes. Why? To be honest, Bruce had no clue. When Tim asked him for batarangs to give to Dick while he worked on the wingdings, Bruce had assumed he had Dick's consent to experiment with them. Dick sighed in annoyance, his shoulders dropped, and he yelled, Timothy, I don't care if you mess with my weapons, provided you ask first. A muffled, yelled reply of, sorry, came from somewhere in the cave, but it didn't sound particularly sincere. Dick grumbled a few words under his breath, then picked the batarangs back up and stowed them away in his suit, then collapsed on a spinning chair next to Bruce, slowly pushing himself around in a circle. Hey, B, remember that grapple gun I took from you a while ago? Still giving you hell? Yep, Dick mumbled, popping the P. I might get Vic to look at it. If he can't figure it out, I'll hand it over to Tim to mess with. Bruce nodded and flipped through his case file for a few minutes. How'd your mission go? Have you ever seen robots tie someone out before? So, not great. Dick laughed, kicking his feet up on the desk next to Bruce. Oh, wonderful for Dinah and I. Barry, not so much. Alright guys, now that's the end of chapter 3 of the one where the Justice League almost didn't figure it out by Bats and the Birds. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.